everybody, my name is Mars. You can call me MG if you would like, and today we're going to be going over all of the reading challenges and book clubs that I was participating in during 2024, and we're just gonna see how much I actually read for the challenges and book clubs. First though, I would like to apologize if you hear anything in the background of this video. It is raining, it's windy, and there's this weird mechanical-ish sound that just keeps happening intermittently, and I tried to wait for it to stop, and I did, and then as soon as I started filming, it started again, and I've done that like 3 times now, and it's just at random times. I don't know what's going on, I don't know what it is. We're just gonna ignore it. Let's get into the video though. So I have my reading journal here, and we're going to start off talking about book clubs. I've been part of 2 book clubs over the course of this year. The Nostalgia Train book club, run by my friend Violet, and the Bujo Buddies book club, which is run by Jess from the channel Jashi Corinne, and also her friends Rachel and Monica. So, starting off with the Nostalgia Train book club, there were 9 book club picks this year, and we're just going to go top to bottom, beginning to end, and talk about them. So in January, we had Wild Magic, which I read and thought was okay. I'm probably not going to continue on with the series, but it was a fine middle grade book. Then in February, we had Cinder, which I loved. I adore the Lunar Chronicles. It's such a great series. I actually binged the whole series and had a wonderful time doing it. I will try and remember to link that vlog down below for you because it was a great time. March, we had Looking for Alaska by John Green, and I skipped this. I've read John Green before, both as a teenager and as an adult, and his books just aren't for me. I'm not a huge contemporary reader, and while I do enjoy some contemporary books, I'm just not a big fan of John Green. I'm a fan of him as a person. I think he's a really cool dude. I just don't like his books very much, the few that I've read, so I was like, I'm just not going to read Looking for Alaska. I have no interest in it. April, we skipped, and then we have May, where we read The Maze Runner, and I listened to an audiobook of this, and it was an interesting time. The audiobook was very poorly edited, and also I just didn't enjoy the book. I read this as a kid, and I remember thinking it was a good book, but as an adult now, with, better critical thinking skills and, a literal degree in literary criticism, I know how to criticize a book, I guess we can say it like that. There was just so many things that I'm like, but why? And I just did not enjoy this book. Then we come to June, where the book was Watership Down, and this was interesting. It was not at all what I expected. I don't think I disliked it, but I don't think I liked it either. It was a book that I read, and it made me feel emotions, and we're just gonna leave it at that. Then in July, I skipped. Well, the book club skipped that month. We didn't pick one. August was The Host, and I ended up DNFing this because I did not like the age gap in the romance. I thought it was very problematic. We'll go with that. And then I also this was a book that made me realize, upon reflecting on it and other books I've read in the past, that I don't like books where someone else is in control of the main character's mind or body or something. That's just not a trope that I enjoy, which is the whole point of this book. It's about aliens who come to Earth and take control of the humans, which I will put an asterisk here. The exception is Animorphs. I'm really enjoying the Animorphs series, which is a very similar premise to The Host, but in a very different execution. But yeah, in general, that trope just is not for me. September, we read The Fairy Tale Detectives, which is the first book in the Sisters Grimm series, and I liked it. It definitely could have had more to it, but it was still a fun book, and I am curious as to how the series plays out, because I did read this series as a kid, but I don't think I ever finished it, so I think I'm going to continue on and, read the rest of the books just to find out how it all ends. In October, the pick was Vampire Academy, and I had a great time with this. This is another series that I read when I was younger. I think I was probably 12, 13, 14 when I read it, so over a decade ago. And I enjoyed it when I was younger. This time around, I really loved it. Is it perfect? No, but it's really fun and has a lot of interesting ideas. And I'm actually planning on reading the second book in the series very soon, like next week, kind of soon. And speaking of books I plan on reading soon, we skipped November, didn't pick a book. The December pick is The Little Prince, and I technically haven't read it yet, but I will be reading it next week. So, I have an audiobook for this. And that is the Nostalgia Train Book Club. Out of 9 picks, I've only skipped one, and one I technically haven't read yet, but I will be reading it, so I think that's a pretty good completion rate. Next up is the Bujo Buddies Book Club, and there is a book for each month. So again, we're just gonna go January to December and talk about it. In January, we read Ink Blood Sister Scribe, which I enjoyed. I thought it was really well done. I enjoy books that explore sibling dynamics, especially half siblings, because I'm a person who has half siblings, and I feel like that's not a dynamic you really see a lot in literature. And so I'm very glad that that was something that we explored in this book. The February pick was Butcher and Blackbird, which I didn't expect to love as much as I did. I just, a really funny, silly, weird book. I love horror, so I thought I would enjoy those aspects. I didn't really know how I'd feel about the romance because before this year I wasn't very much a romance reader, but I feel like I've really found the types of romance I enjoy. In Butcher and Blackbird, I really enjoyed. Unfortunately, later on in the year, I read Leather and Lark, the sequel, and I didn't love it, but I am still tentatively excited for the third book in the series that comes out next year, Scythe and Sparrow? I think that's what it's called, but yeah, Butcher and Blackbird, enjoyed. March, we had Building a Second Brain. I didn't like this, and we will talk about it a little bit more when we get to later entries. But then April, we read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I thought this was a nice, fun time. I didn't, absolutely love it, but I had a good time reading it. Then, speaking of romances I didn't know if I would like, but ended up loving, we had Bride for May, the Allie Hazelwood book, and it was just another silly, fun time. I had a good time reading it. It's not high literature or anything, it's not like an ultimate favorite book, but I did still really enjoy it, and I have no interest in Allie Hazelwood's contemporary romance books, but if she publishes more fantasy romance, I think I'm gonna check those out. In June, we had Big Magic, which is another nonfiction self-help book like Building a Second Brain, and I was not a fan of this. I thought it was fine, but I didn't really enjoy it. July, the book was A Soul to Keep, and this was my first experience with a smutty romance book on audio. I read it digitally while listening to the audiobook, and while I did love the experience of that, the sex scenes on audio are not something that I would like to experience again. It was a little bit bizarre and uncomfortable, and it was interesting. It was a very interesting time, we'll say that. In August, the book was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and I started this and then ended up DNFing it, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I was listening to it as an audiobook, and I was just not retaining any of the information. This is a sci-fi book, and so there are a lot of interesting concepts and things going on, and I think I would like to try again, either as an ebook or a physical book, because reading with my eyes, I tend to take in more information than reading with my ears, so it just wasn't the correct format for me in that book. September's pick was Quicksilver, and I DNF'd this because I didn't like it. I thought the characters were annoying, I thought the world building was bland, and I didn't enjoy the writing style, so I was like, you know what? I don't need to put myself through this. Then in October, we had Feel Good Productivity, and this is where we're going to talk about the fact that I don't like self-help nonfiction books, and this book club this year really helped me learn that about myself. I didn't enjoy any of the self-help books. I ended up DNFing Feel Good Productivity about 60% through because I was getting really upset with it. I was genuinely mad by the way this information was presented. I'm not saying that this isn't I'm not saying this is a bad genre. I'm saying so many of the books that I've read from this kind of self-help genre just have been poorly written and like repetition is a big thing in these books, and it's really annoying. For Feel Good Productivity specifically, I DNF'd it because a lot of the concepts were so juvenile, I guess we could say. Like, one of the chapters was literally about, like, do the work that you love and it won't feel like work and you'll want to get more done. And then the next chapter was all about being nice to other people so that they'll be nice to you and it'll help you get ahead in the world. And I'm like, is this third grade? Like, I genuinely was so frustrated with that book. I'm like, I'm not finishing it. So I didn't. But then we come to November, and the pick for the book club was The Spell Shop, and I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was fun and cozy and lighthearted, and I do wish we delved a little bit deeper into some issues, but at the same time, I enjoyed how light it was and that it didn't get too bogged down with like world building and exterior conflict. I thought it was a lovely little read. Then we come to December, where the book club pick is Hell Yeah or No, which is another self-help book, and I am making the executive decision not to even pick it up. It's literally only like 100 pages maybe, like it's very short, and I do have access to it like very easily, but I don't want to put myself through that. I would rather read a book that I have a chance of enjoying, and I just don't think that's going to happen from the self-help genre, so I'm skipping that entirely, and I'm not regretting that. So out of the 12 book club picks for the Bujo Buddies book club, I read 11, so a very high completion rate. I'm gonna flip the page to my challenge trackers, and I took part in 2 different reading challenges. The first is my friend Lynn, who set up this thing where there's a different theme each month, and you list your favorite books under that theme, and then you can either reread your own books or read other people's favorites, and I chose to read other people's favorites, and in order to not overwhelm myself, I just picked one. So I tried to vary whose like recommendation it was for each month, but I also kind of just wanted to go with the ones that sounded the most interesting to me. So again, January to December, let's figure out which ones I actually read and enjoyed and which ones I read and didn't quite enjoy. So first up in January, the theme was favorite childhood book, and I read Wild Magic, which was recommended by Lynn. If you remember, that was also the Nostalgia Train book club pick, so it worked out well. I got to check it off for both. And like I said, I thought this was a fine book. There were some things that I wasn't a huge fan of, but overall it was all right, and I don't think I'm going to continue with the series. February, the theme was favorite romance book, and I read Ice Planet Barbarians, which was recommended by Violet, and I loved this. I had a really good time with it. I actually read it as part of the same vlog that I read Butcher and Blackbird for, and also another book that I did not love. So I will try and remember to link that down below as well if you're interested in watching. Yeah, Ice Planet Barbarians was a really fun time, and I've since read the next 3 books in the series, and the second one is my favorite so far. Then in March, it was a recent favorite book, so a book that you read in the previous 3 years, and Violet put A Winter's Promise, and I kind of fudged things a little bit because I had already read A Winter's Promise and 2 of the books in the series after that, and all I had left was the 3rd book, The Storm of Echoes, so I counted it and I read it, and I enjoyed it, and I'm very glad to have finished that series. In April, the theme was favorite author book, so a book by your favorite author, and I read Sorcery of Thorns, which was recommended by Madison, and like, let me tell you, you'll see this come up again later on. Madison has some great book recommendations. I loved Sorcery of Thorns. It was amazing. Then in May, it was favorite shifter book, and I fudged this one too. So I put Hawk Song by Amelia Atwater Rhodes for this category. Sam also put Hawk Song, so I'm like, well, I can pick it, even though it's technically also a reread for me. It's not like a new read from someone else's favorites, but like it was also from her list, so I counted it. I reread Hawk Song by Amelia Atwater Rhodes, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. It's so good. where are we at now? June. June is favorite Fae book, and off of Violet's recommendation, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I had a great time. Not really a June read for us up here in the Northern Hemisphere because it's very wintry, but I don't really care about reading books in season. I still had a great time with it. Then in July, it was favorite queer rep, and once again, I got a book from Madison, and she recommended A Marvelous Light, and I loved it. This is historical fantasy with gay romance, and it was amazing. It was a really good time, and I still have to continue on with the series. The second book is Sapphic, and I'm so excited for it. For August, it was favorite standalone, and from Spencer, I read Notes on an Execution, and I thought this was good. I didn't think it was great. Like, I enjoyed the concept more than I enjoyed the actual product of it. Then in September, we had favorite dystopian book, and I read Sea of Tranquility off of Madison's recommendations. And this is the one book where, I don't want to say Madison fell flat, but like, recommendation from Madison that I didn't love as much as the others. I thought Sea of Tranquility was good, but it's not really my type of sci-fi. I'm very picky about sci-fi, and this book just didn't really fit into the type that I really enjoy, but it was still a pretty good book. For October, we had favorite vampire book, and I read In the Forests of the Night, which was off of Sam's list, and this was a good book. You could tell that it was written by like a 14-year-old. It definitely could have had better execution, but the story itself was still good, and I would be interested in continuing on with this series, although the series is like 15 books long or something. Maybe not 15, but it's like a long series, so we'll see how far I get into it. Then in November, for favorite manga or comic, I went with another Sam recommendation, and that was Hanakimi. I read the first volume of this manga, and I didn't dislike it, I just didn't love it, so like I might continue on with it in the future, I might not, I really don't know. Like if I'm in the mood for that kind of manga, it's kind of like a slice of life kind of thing, and if I'm in the mood for it, I might pick it up, but I might not. We'll just have to wait and see. And finally, I didn't check it off on this, but I did read the December pick. So December's theme is favorite elemental magic book, and once again, we have Madison, and she recommended A River Enchanted, and I literally finished this like 3 or 4 days ago, and it was really good. I had a great time, and I'm so excited to pick up the sequel to see how it all ends, because it is part of a duology. And this was also part of a vlog where I taste tested 3 different books by Rebecca Ross, and I don't know if it's going to be up by the time this video goes up. I don't remember the order of my vetted videos, but if the vlog is up before this video, then I will link it down below. If not, you'll just have to wait a couple of days for it to come out. And then finally, we have the Somber Honey Reading Challenge, my own reading challenge, which for the past 2 years has been just a prompt for each month. And so, the January prompt is the number 1 in the title, and I read 100 Cupboards. This was a reread for me. I read this as a kid, and I enjoyed it as an adult too, and will potentially continue on with the series. We'll just have to see if I can get access to it. For February, it was Shares a Name with a Revelry in the Dark character. Revelry in the Dark is my debut novel that came out last year, and I read Ice Planet Barbarians because the main character, her name is Georgie, and that's also the main character of Revelry in the Dark, so it worked out there. For March, it was tree word in the title, so like tree, leaf, trunk, stem, anything like that, and I read House of Leaves. This is another vlog that I'll link down below for you, but I loved House of Leaves. It was absolutely amazing, and it's also like the best Little Free Library find that I've ever had because it's House of Leaves. It's like a $30 book in paperback, and it was just in a Little Free Library in pretty dang good condition. I did drop it when I was pulling it out of the Little Free Library, so the edges are scuffed, but that's entirely my fault. Yeah, I had a great time. For April, the prompt was preposition and title, and I read Sorcery of Thorns because of is a preposition. Then in May, for an alternate history book, I read The Golden Compass. This is another book that I vlogged. I read the entire trilogy together, and it was really fun. I had a lovely time. I have beautiful editions. You can actually see right over here on my shelf. I have the 10th anniversary editions, and they look stunning. For, what am I up to? June? It was a scary book, so like an intimidating book. And I read The Way Through the Woods, which is a nonfiction book about mushrooms and mourning, and it was okay. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. Then in July, it was a book that involves a play, and I read A Midsummer Night's Dream, my favorite Shakespeare, which is a play in itself, but there's also a play within the play, which happens in a couple of Shakespeare books. I definitely had my options if I wanted to stick to Shakespeare, but yeah, I reread A Midsummer Night's Dream and had a wonderful time. I pulled up a production of it on YouTube to have going while I was reading it, and that is my favorite way to partake in plays. I mean, I would love to see the production live, but aside from going to an actual performance, that's my favorite way to partake in plays. Then for August is a book with or about siblings, and the book that I read was European Travel for the Monstrous Gentlewoman, which follows a lot of like found family siblings. Like these girls kind of come together and call each other sisters, but the main character also has a half sister. So again, half siblings. I think that's such a cool thing that people don't really use in their books a lot, and they should use more often. For September, it is a book with at least four distinct colors on the cover, and I read An Ember in the Ashes. I have the new paperback cover edition, and I really loved that. I am hoping to get the rest of the series for Christmas. My mom asked for a long list of books to choose from so that there was still an element of surprise in what I got for Christmas, and I did put the rest of the series on there, so I really hope that those are some of the books that she got me, because I am itching to continue this, especially because my friend Zainab recently read the second book and loved it, and I just really want to read it. Then we have, for October, a book with a bat on the cover, and I picked up Silverwing by Kenneth Opel, and I DNF'd it because I just don't like that kind of book. I don't know, it's a type of middle grade that's just not really my thing. I do enjoy reading middle grade even as a 20-something, but that one just wasn't it for me. For November, the prompt was Author Follows a Different Religion, and I read Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, aka Shannon Chakraborty, and she is Muslim and I am not. And then for December, the prompt was a book with an animal's point of view, and I read Animal Farm, which I've never read before, even in like high school or college or anything, and I was surprised by how much I loved this. I thought it was so well written, so interesting. I had a great time, so I'm really glad that I read it. So, there we have my challenges. For both of them, I have a 100% completion rate, so better than I did with the book clubs. Although I'm not super hard on myself if I don't complete things. Like, I am a completionist, but I also understand that sometimes you can't complete everything. So if I have like prompts and stuff that I don't get to for whatever reason, I'm okay with that happening. But I am excited for all the book clubs and challenges I'll be getting into in 2025. So we'll have to come back this time next year to see how I did on those. But for now, we have come to the end of the video. If you've enjoyed it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everyone.